Noam, are you hopeful on the future? Or do you think that we've forgot some of the things that you're mentioning that happened in the 40s, or we forgot times where a lot of our basic human rights were not there? Do you think we're destined to repeat this? Or are you hopeful for the future?
I think, pretty generally speaking, there's regression, but over time, the range of rights and recognition of rights has been extended. So, for example, the Forbes magazine uh, cover story that I mentioned couldn't appear today. There's greater sensitivity to the needs and rights of broader groups, not only of people, but of animals. So plenty of animal experimentation that was done right where I live and work 40, 50 years ago would not be permitted today. Virtually no experiments on invasive experiments with apes and monkeys is permitted now. And similarly with people, the things you wouldn't say about women that people made jokes about 40 or 50 years ago. Okay, you just don't do it. It's a growth of sensitivity, uh, human decency, a recognition of other people's rights. Now, it can, at the extremes, go to the point where it goes too far. Okay, let's be careful about that. But at the core, at the base, is a very positive development of expansion of recognition that people have rights, they have their dignity, they have their self-respect. We should honor that.
You famously said that we can't have a capitalist democracy, and yet it feels like that's what we've all been sold. Is that the root of many of the problems we have in the world or in the US?
But by now, uh, in my opinion, just about every developed society for the last 100 years or so has been one or another form of state capitalism. That includes the ones that are called socialist and communist. And the state capitalist systems all have features that we don't think about much or will again, but that are very dubious. Like take the concept of having a job, wage labor, deciding that for most of your waking hours, you will rent yourself to a tyrant who has total control over you, way beyond anything that Stalin had. Stalin didn't tell people when you're able to go to the bathroom, or what clothes you're allowed to wear, or do you take this path or that path if you're going to pick up a package and put it somewhere. Uh, if you're a driver for a truck, didn't tell you when you're allowed to have a coffee stop, whether you're allowed to back up. That's what it means to have a job. Total subordination for most of your waking hours to tyranny. Now, that hasn't always been, now it's accepted as normal. Should it be? Well, you go back to the early days of the Industrial Revolution. It was considered by working people to be an outrageous assault against fundamental human dignity. It's taken for granted among working people. You read the labor press, very free back in the 19th century, full of denunciations of this. The U.S. Republican Party under Abraham Lincoln condemned it as a crime, said the only way we can accept wage labor is if it's temporary until you become a free man again. Now we don't think about it. Should we? I think we should. That's the core of all of these societies, including the ones that call themselves communist. They still have the same thing. There's a different form of authority. Well, those are questions we also should be raising. Lots of things that we don't think about are very important to look into, whether it's the dedication to kill Russians and brag about it in the 1980s when you're reading a New York Times headline today, or whether it's fundamental features of the society, or whether it's sensitivity to other people's dignity and self-respect. You know, the kinds of things that aren't thought about are often the most important ones. And in fact, a kind of a good rule of thumb, I think, is if there's some issue on which there seems to be total consensus, though it's not a truism, you should be suspicious. There's probably something serious going on that you ought to look into.